Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto trained under his mother Kushina Uzumaki and built a harem of Kunōchi while gaining power and rewards, movie part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. There was complete silence inside the Hokage's office as different Junins stood waiting for their team to be announced. Among the Junins was one Kushina Uzumaki. It had been more than 12 years since Kyuubi was forcefully removed from her seal by that masked man in her weakened state. The masked man had made Kyuubi attack the village fortunately or unfortunately depending on perspective. Kyuubi's chakra was split in half by Minato using Shiki Fujin with yin half being resealed into Kushina so that she could survive her weakened condition and yang half being sealed into their son Naruto. Minato had sacrificed himself that day to save the village and more importantly save her and Naruto. After the attack Hiruzen Sarutobi, or as he is better known as Sandaime Hokage, had taken the mantle of Hokage again and had been leading the village since then. After the attack Sarutobi and Kushina had decided to withhold the information regarding Naruto being a Jinchuriki and had chosen to inform only the village council that Kyuubi had been successfully sealed into Kushina, and just as they expected the information was leaked about Kushina containing the Kyuubi. Sarutobi had done this hoping that this would provide enough cover for Naruto to grow strong without any interference, and he also knew that since Kushina was widely regarded as a master in the art of Fuinjutsu and was an Uzumaki, the villagers would trust Kushina. While Kushina had decided to hide Naruto being a Jinchuriki in hopes that he would have a normal childhood and to make sure that he could not be targeted by other villages like she had been by Kumogakure when she was young. So only few people knew about Naruto who Sarutobi and Kushina trusted, but they were sure it would get out at some point and just hoped that it would not be too soon. During the first few years after losing Minato, Kushina felt alone and fell into depression, but taking care of Naruto and seeing him grow up had brought her happiness back as she gradually came to realize that she couldn't let her emotions affect Naruto as it had nothing to do with him and she wanted to give him as good of a life as she could. While he grew up, she told him all about his dad and how much he loved Naruto and how happy Minato was when he heard that she was pregnant. She even told him stories about how strong Minato was and how he had stopped the Third World War, and Naruto gradually started seeing Minato as his idol. Naruto throughout his early childhood was oblivious about the seal, but Kushina decided to tell him on his 10th birthday, which he took pretty well and was happy that he shared Kyuubi with his mother. Kushina taught him how to better control his negative emotions so that he wouldn't have Kyuubi-infused outbursts. While he grew up, there was something strange that Kushina noticed whenever she was with Naruto outside in the forest. It was just whenever he was close to trees and plants, all the leaves and flowers would become vibrant and full of life. It was a very subtle change, which is why she didn't notice it earlier, but ever since then she had her suspicions, so she tried to look into it. She had tried various methods. She had his blood tested and even got him to focus his chakra into plants to see if they would be affected, but nothing had happened. She decided to forget the whole subject but still kept an eye on him while training to spot any anomalies. Today we find Kushina in the Hokage's office because she wanted to take on a team. Ever since Naruto was born, Kushina had stayed at home taking care of him, but now that he was older and was somewhat able to handle himself better, she had decided to rejoin the shinobi life as she had missed the excitement. Going home and only rarely going out with her friends was quite dull. Not to mention the pent-up frustration in her life as she rarely went out on dates, and when she did, she never liked a guy enough to allow him a second date, which is why she needed something to distract her mind, and teaching some of the younger generation might just be able to do that. The strange effect Naruto had on the environment was another reason why Kushina would love to have Naruto on her team since he was also graduating today, but she knew that there was a very small chance that he may not like that, as it would probably be somewhat embarrassing to have your mother as your sensei. Although he was pretty perverted, so she wasn't sure if he would actually mind being on her team, as she had caught him staring at her and other women a few times whilst walking around and smiling to himself with a very faint blush which easily gave his thoughts away, and she wanted to beat Jiraiya to a pulp for that. Now Team 7. Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno and Kiba Inuzuka. Sarutobi suddenly announced, bringing Kushina out of her thoughts and causing her heart to beat a little faster in excitement. There were only 4 Junins left to receive a squad, and both Kushina and her friend Kuranai were one of them. Sensei Hatake Kakashi, Sarutobi said, and Kushina let out a sigh in relief. She realized that she could still get Naruto on her team, and she was hoping he would be happy to have her as his sensei. She had already trained him a lot growing up, and he was an overall hardworking student, had a lot potential to be top of the year if he bothered, which he obviously didn't. Team 8. Hinata Hyuga, Sai and Shino Aburame, Sensei Kuranai Yuhi. Kushina watched as her younger friend went up to take the paper that described the 3 on her squad, only to see her almost trip as soon as she had grabbed the paper. Kushina, you will lead Team 9, and as for the members, you will find out at the academy, it's a surprise. Kushina still went up to Sarutobi to try and get him to give her the paper, but soon realized that he wouldn't give her it because when she looked at his face he seemed pretty serious about his surprise. She just hoped Naruto was on her team because she was sure he had been avoiding her, especially the last few months, and she didn't know why. She just thought he just needed space growing up and all, but being on the same team would allow them to bond again. She also needed to do something about his perverted tendencies, like eyeing women and helping Jiraiya do his stupid research, although she had to say if he was doing anything that Jiraiya does, then he had to be pretty good at hiding it, as she hasn't caught him yet. She had seen him stare at her a few times, but she didn't think anything of it. As he was her son, she knew what to expect from him in terms of skills. He was a wild card of this year group. He heavily depended on his ninjutsu but was decent in kenjutsu, something she could work with, and he was also the second best at genjutsu in the academy after Sasuke Uchiha. He was pretty much decent in all the arts, but he excelled in ninjutsu. She hadn't pushed Naruto too hard with training like some clans do, as she wanted him to have normal childhood unlike what she had, which is why she let him read and train on his own so that when he got bored he would go out and spend time with his friends. I should get to the academy and find out who I have got to work with. Kushina thought with a sigh. She just hoped Sandaime didn't give her some arrogant clan airs. Meanwhile at the academy, Kiba was grumbling about being on the same team as his self-proclaimed rival Sasuke. Alright everyone, settle down, we are not done yet. Iruka yelled in class now that most already knew their teams. He wanted to finish announcing quickly so that the Junins could come and take their genins. Now Team 9 is just Naruto and your sensei is Kushina Uzumaki. When that name had left Iruka's mouth, every guy was staring at Naruto. They had all seen Kushina at one point, and she was the very definition of a hot MILF. Of course Naruto knew what everyone thought about his mom, as he often had similar thoughts about her, and he wasn't oblivious to the looks she got. Sadly for everyone, none even had a chance with her. She was just way out of their league. He had to sigh though, as it would be even more difficult to control himself now that she was his sensei. Ever since he learned about it has been pretty tense and stressful to be around his mom, so he has been avoiding her the last few months as much as he could. Honestly, like every other guy in the village, his mom was in all of his wet dreams, and he didn't want to get into an awkward situation with her. He was sure she would be angry at him if he tried anything with her. So he often ogled her when she was walking around the house, but didn't push his luck with trying anything else. He spent a lot of his time training and researching, with a few times being on his mom but mostly on other women, so let's just say his godfather's perverseness had really rubbed off on him. Seriously though, since a lot of guys in class learned about masturbation, Kushina was often on their minds. Naruto got to see his buxom mom all the time, so she was always on his mind. With Kushina and Kuranai. Hey Kuranai, are you okay? You look a bit discouraged. Is there something wrong? Kushina asked, ignoring all the leering civilians looking at her bouncing. She did appreciate the looks. It made her realize that she wasn't an old hag just yet, but her DDS were slightly annoying. Even beneath her flak jacket they wouldn't stop bouncing. And no, well it's my first team and I'm given 2 clan heirs and an emo guy with none of them being genjutsu users, but I won't give up now that I'm finally a Junin. I'm sure I can handle this. Kurenai said. However, her body was shaking, which was to be expected since Kurenai only recently became a Junin, and Kushina too was nervous to meet her team. Sensing Anko coming up from behind, most likely with the intention of squeezing her s like she usually tried, Kushina shot an arm backwards and grabbed Anko's head. You are too easy to get a read on, Anko. I can feel your perverse intentions oozing off of you. Kushina said. Kurenai looked perplexed. Was that actually something you could sense? Mu no fun, Kushi-chan. Hey, let me take a look at your teams. Are there any future or current studs? Anko said before grabbing Kurenai's sheet and looking for Kushina's, but realized that she didn't have one. Looks like Kur-chan was the lucky one. You got 2 young boys on your team, but then again you never know, there could be a stud on your team, Kushi-chan. Anko said, trying to hint at something, but Kushina knew where she was going with this, and surprisingly she actually liked the idea, so maybe she could tease her students a little. Yeah, thanks Anko, but I didn't really need to know that, Kushina said as she shook her head. Want me to introduce you to some other students? I'm sure they would love to do you. Anko said happily. Anko, you do know that I have a son who I don't think would like anyone taking his dad's place. Kushina informed Anko, who didn't really pay her any attention. Yeah, but honestly, are you really satisfied? I mean, how long has it been since you got laid? And since the Yondaime is, Anko teased, only for Kurenai to cut in. That's enough, Anko. Kurenai said sternly as Anko seemed to be getting carried away in her teasing. Okay, but since you interrupted, it will be alright for Kurenai to join in on the fun too, right, Kushi-chan? Anko looked around as Kushina had left for the academy, leaving them both behind. Kushina was walking along the corridors in the academy before she reached her destination. Opening the door, she saw a class full of students. She must have been the first to arrive. Alright, Team 9. Come to training ground 69. You have 10 minutes or you fail. See you later, honey. Kushina finished off, waving towards Naruto before quickly disappearing in a gust of wind. She didn't know who was on her team, so she just announced loudly and left so that she could meet them and get introductions going without all the boys ogling her in class. Wait, fail? What? Naruto murmured before quickly running towards the door, with every boy grumbling about lucky blonde bastards and why did they not get on Team 9. Training ground 69. Kushina was standing waiting with a stopwatch in her hand, looking until her first student arrived. It was Naruto at 6:50. Hey Naru-chan, I didn't expect you to be on my team, and you're quick on your feet, arriving earlier than your teammates. Kushina praised, noticing a little blush while his eyes were avoiding her. Thank you very much. His voice sounded very giddy, almost like he was excited around her, and she was unsure about it, but she might know the reason why he was so excited. Naruto noticed that Kushina looked down at her watch, and that's when he realized that she didn't know he was the only member of Team 9 and was waiting for his teammates. Mom, Iruka-sensei said that I am the only one on Team 9 inches, Naruto said. Really? So that was Sandame's surprise. Alright, well that's just good news. Now I get to spend more time with you, and later when you are stronger I might even teach you how to control Kyuubi's chakra. Spoke Kushina teasingly, and she thought, maybe I should try to see if his glances have been innocent or he really has been eyeing me. Oh, teasing him is going to be so much fun. By the way, you pass in your timing, so now let us start off by giving a short introduction of ourselves. Here I will start. My name is Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, as you know, but while I'm your mom, I am still your sensei, so please just call me Kushina sensei or just sensei. Kushina started. As for what I like my little Naru-chan. What I dislike though are lazy guys and Kumo. Kushina said, confusing her son, who did not know about her grudge against that particular country. Dreams for the future. Well, not really sure, maybe I want to find a nice guy to start a relationship with. As for hobbies, I don't really have time for that since I am a single mother, so I'm managing things. Kushina said, scratching the back of her head. She wasn't sure if she was giving a good example for an introduction. Alright, you're up, Naruto. Okay, my name is Naruto Namikaze, and I like my mom, ramen, and now my new gorgeous sensei as well. A small smile appeared on her face and even a little pink color. She was a little weak to such blunt praise. Naruto just thought if she is gonna keep calling him Naru-chan, he might as well get back at her, and she really was gorgeous. My hobby is training and judging women on their looks, and sensei, you are 11 out of 10. As for my dream for the future is that I want to surpass dad and also become Hokage. Kushina smiled. She would love helping him achieve that. It was a pretty tall task considering how strong Minato was, but she was sure he would get there as long as he kept his never give up attitude. Inwardly though, Kushina was surprised that Naruto was being so blatant about his thoughts for her. Well, thank you for that. At least you don't dislike me being your sensei. There are some people who believe women to be weaker and less fit to be a sensei, so I'm happy to have you. Kushina finished with a big smile. Now on to the less fun part, your test, she said in a grim voice, making him snap out of his imaginary world. Wait, what test? Naruto asked. Well, of all 28 genin right now we will cut you down. Only 12 can actually pass every year from each class, or the village would have too many shinobis. What the hell? Naruto groaned out. Don't worry, I'm more than confident you will pass, it's very easy. Kushina assured. Kushina then zipped down her flak jacket and then took off her blue blouse too, leaving her in her sports bra. Naruto looked like a tomato as Kushina showed a good portion of her cleavage, and he always tried to not eye his mom inside their house because he really didn't want his mom knowing what he has been learning from his godfather, as well as the fact that he quite liked his mom more than he should. Kushina was standing in her sports bra with black form-fitting pants that reached her ankles, and her hair was put in a ponytail that was reaching her waist. All he could do is stare at her. She was just perfect. Hey, attention up here, she said whilst smirking, seeing his intentions becoming clearer and clearer to her with each passing second, so she clapped her hands, getting him to look up. Kushina was quite surprised that Naruto was being really straightforward today. He wasn't hiding his thoughts from her. She knew he was a pervert when he was younger, as he would spend a lot of time with Jiraiya talking and giggling, but she just thought he would grow out of it. But looking at him now, he was behaving like an extremely horny teenager. For the next 3 hours we are going to play tag. Everything is allowed. I won't block or attack, only dodge, so you can come at me as soon as I say go, and of course there is a punishment in the end for you if you fail. Do you understand? Kushina asked. Mom. Sensei, please forgive me, but how big are they? Naruto asked, leering at her cleavage. She hadn't reprimanded him for eyeing her, so he might as well take the blunt approach. He has seen her in less, but his mom's friends were always over at their house, so he controlled himself and went out to do his research elsewhere. Naruto, seriously. You are being brave today, but you really seem curious, so just because it's you, I'll tell you they are a DD and tell you what, if you do good you get to have a closer look, understood? You are growing up, so I might as well teach you how to control your hormones. She teased him, hoping to motivate him a little. If he wasn't a pervert this wouldn't have worked, but knowing him this will help him progress at a tremendous speed. Yes, sensei. Naruto yelled so loudly that she was shocked. Well, at least she was now sure that her trick worked. Naruto was just excited. This was turning out to be way better than he expected. He thought she would scold him and be angry with him. Alright, if you manage to land any punch or just touch me you win. Go, she said before disappearing in another gust of wind, and Naruto quickly sprinted to look for her. Hey, anyone in his shoes would have wanted to win the prize. Kushina decided to hide for the first half hour, enjoying her lunch before she came out in the middle of a clearing in the woods. There she sat down and waited for Naruto to come, and she didn't have to wait for long as Naruto showed up in a few minutes. Kushina took a stance so she was ready to run, however she only took a confused look when he fell down on his knees. Please, sensei. Please let me win. He yelled with his forehead on the ground and Kushina just looked with a big sweat drop. Well, she had to give him points for originality. She knew he was just messing with her. He was really competitive, so he was definitely going to try and win this, especially now that he knew the prize. However, being distracted Kushina, she was late in noticing a shadow clone shooting up from the ground. She barely dodged it, and when she did, the original was in front of her, reaching for her S, not surprising her in the least. With a big jump backwards, she jumped up on top of a branch. "You really like these?" Kushina questioned, squeezing her S together, giving Naruto an eyeful. "Alright, I have decided if you win you get to give them a nice good squeeze." Kushina couldn't help but chuckle seeing his shocked face, and he even had an erection in his pants which didn't seem little at all. "Well, see you later, my pervert student," Kushina called out before leaving at speed that Naruto couldn't possibly follow. She was going to go after him, but she just made it look like she was running away so that Naruto tried to look for her. As soon as she was sure he had lost sight of her, she tracked back and found him walking aimlessly, so Kushina appeared right behind Naruto. She leaned in and whispered into his ear, "Come and get them, future Hokage." Naruto, turning around, saw directly down into the glorious valley. He immediately lunged forward to grab her, but Kushina jumped backwards to avoid him. Afterwards, she jumped out on the surface of a lake, and Naruto, oblivious to his surrounding, jumped straight down into the water. Kushina gave a hearty laugh. This was so funny, just watching her horny son run after her, and half the time was already up. Another Naruto came running out the bushes right towards her, avoiding a sword slash. She would give his kenjutsu a middle chunin rank along with his speed, or maybe low chunin. Of course, compared to her, it wasn't impressive. She was a master at kenjutsu after all. Kushina continued playing with him, giving him a couple of quick teasing flashes before running off. Kushina was humming to herself from the highest tree in the forest. She could see her cute student looking for her. With the final 10 minutes left, she decided to appear in front of him, letting him try once more. His clones didn't waste any time coming straight at her, but clearly letting their desire to win be shown, as they were both drooling while Naruto just stared at her from some distance. Laughing each time one of them hit the ground, in their haste she took out her watch, when they were both down. 2 seconds left, and then Kushina turned whiter than snow, looking down, seeing that Naruto himself had a hand around her ankle. While playing with his clones, she completely forgot about the original. Few moments later, Naruto sat with his back up against a tree trying to regain his breath. Kushina had given him a lunchbox she had brought for him. There was no loser, seeing as it was just him and his clones, but had he performed poorly he would be tied to a tree without a lunchbox, but he had done very well, and now there was just one matter to settle. How long do I get to hold them? Despite having been running around after her, Naruto was pretty quick in getting close to her while eyeing her S like a predator after its prey. Looks like his energy was back after his lunch, but then again he had a never-ending supply of stamina. Seriously, she has hardly seen him tired. 1 minute. Kushina surrendered. She was still keeping her sports bra on as she directed Naruto's hands to her big soft S. He looked amazed when his hands sank into them and Kushina started her stopwatch. He was of course dazed, as he didn't try squeezing them, so she barely felt anything. "I don't have to tell you that you can't tell anyone about this, do I?" she asked, and he quickly swore he would tell no one. "Good, because if you did we couldn't play this kind of game again," she said with a little smirk on her face as Naruto pushed her together. He looked surprised at what she was saying, but Kushina couldn't pass up this chance of having fun with her cute little Naru-chan. She really had started to feel a little frustrated, because whenever she went on dates she felt like she was cheating on Minato, which is why she never went on a second date with the same guy, so that they didn't move any further. She would also change subject and subtly move herself whenever one of her dates tried to make a move on her. It just made her feel uncomfortable for some reason that she couldn't fathom. She also been trying to keep herself busy with training Naruto, and he was a pretty skilled genin with plenty of potential. She could have the strongest ninja and have bragging rights over everyone else that her student and son was the strongest out of all the teams. Now that she knew that Naruto will be extremely motivated getting these kinds of rewards from her, she was going to exploit it to the fullest, and besides, no one would find out. Time's up, Kushina said as Naruto dropped his hands, causing her S to bounce. Naruto was following their movement with his eyes glued. Alright Naruto, we will meet here again tomorrow at 8 o'clock. I'm going to tell Sandaime that you passed. With that, Kushina left once again in a gust of wind. All Naruto could do is sigh and look down at the bulge in his trousers. Hokage's office. Kushina waited patiently once again. The tension in the room was incredible, and Kushina looked on as Kakashi came forward. Team 7 as a pass. Kushina was surprised. He was pretty hard on his students with the bell test. Team 8 has passed. Kushina smiled to her best friend. Maybe her team wasn't so bad after all. Finally, Kushina could step forward. Team 9 has earned a pass, she said before stepping back. The last one was Asuma, who passed Team 10. Sandaime Hokage then dismissed everyone except her. She knew there was no reason to be nervous about what she did. She was only playing a little with her son, and there was no way he knew about it because she had figured out a way to disrupt the Sandaime's telescope technique, which allows him to track an individual using a crystal ball. After she figured out that the technique relied on the user knowing the target's chakra patterns, she just added another layer to hers and Naruto's seal that held Kyuubi so that no one could figure their chakra pattern. Kushina, you know the reason why I decided to put you and Naruto in a team is I was hoping you could help him with controlling Kyuubi's chakra and restrain him if the situation gets out of hand. But what I really want to ask is, are you okay being back into duty, especially with just Naruto being your student? Sarutobi asked, concerned. She had been on a 12-year break. The only real shinobi activity she had been doing was training with Naruto. Of course I realize the reason, because I was thinking of doing the same when he is stronger, and it's fine, everything is coming back to me, so don't worry. I have to say Naruto is getting pretty good with his shadow clones. Kushina asked while slowly moving back towards the door as she had to get home and cook. That's good to hear, and Naruto was bugging me to teach him the shadow clone technique a lot, so I showed him how to do it and he has been practicing it around me. He also managed to figure out the secret behind it. Sarutobi informed Kushina and let out a sigh. Alright, okay then, I will get going because Naruto is probably waiting for me at home, and thank you for putting Naruto on my team. Now that she would be with him a lot more, she could try to rein in his inner pervert, and her rewards would just be helping him become better anyway, so no harm done. Uzumaki Mansion. Minato, after becoming Hokage, had been able to buy the land behind Hokage Monument where he had built a beautiful mansion. It was the same size as most of the clan compounds. The moment anyone entered, there was a big open lounge with a beautiful cream-colored marble floor, and the walls were painted white with a few gold trims, and there were many different family portraits hanging in all the rooms. There were 2 different floors, and there were more rooms than they could make use of. Her and bedroom, which she used to share with Minato, was on the first floor along with Naruto's, with 2 bathrooms in each room. Kitchen and dining room were on the ground floor, and they even had a basement with an indoor hot spring and an indoor training facility which was reinforced by seals to contain most high-ranked jutsus. There was also a small armory with all the scrolls, weapon and gear, to name few types of things that were kept in it, and of course it was locked with a blood seal so that no one but Naruto and Kushina could unlock it. Kushina made her way up the stairs and towards her son's room to check on him. She knocked before opening up the door and looking inside his room, which was bright with white walls and one flame orange wall since he quite liked the color. He had a wide bed in the middle against the back wall with a desk to the bed's right and a wardrobe on left which was filled with his clothes along with a few pair of his favorite full black trousers and tank tops. Honey, you okay? She asked with a sly smile. I am over the moon, Mom. I finally got to touch my first and they were yours. I can't believe how soft you are, and by the way, are we having ramen tonight? Naruto asked with a big grin. Naruto, you know we have to keep this between us, we can't tell anyone. I know what you are up to in your spare time, so this way I will be helping you focus on your training, so don't try anything when we are not training, got it? And of course we are having ramen, it's such a big day. My little boy is finally a genin. She said, roughing his hair. Yes, I got it, and thanks, Mom, I love you. I promise no one will find out, Naruto assured her. Their activities were just starting, there was no way in hell he would let anyone find out and mess this up. Oh, this is going to be so much fun. Naruto exclaimed excitedly whilst rubbing his hands together. Dinner. Both Kushina and Naruto were busy diving into their bowl of ramen. They were both talking with mouths full but still somehow understood each other. Naruto, what can you tell me about other teams? You do know them, right? Kushina said, slurping noodles. They then spent the rest of the dinner talking about other teams and what their training was going to be focused on. When they had both eaten, Naruto left for his room jumping with excitement, and Kushina just slyly smiled, knowing exactly why he was so excited. She cleaned the table and picked up the dishes, while also putting some leftover food into the refrigerator for later. Kushina then took a long hot shower before dropping on her bed. As Kushina laid in bed, she inspected hers. They were still firm and quite perky. She remembered the happy look on Naruto's face as he held them for a minute. It felt good having them be appreciated like that after so long, and how the situation had made her wish for Minato to be alive. It's not like she is betraying Minato, as she is just helping her son reach his maximum potential. After 2 hours of just restless turning like usual, she had been having problem falling asleep alone ever since Minato had died, so she would just lay in bed until she was exhausted enough that her eyes would close. Next morning, Kushina woke up at exactly 7 a.m. and she quietly got up from the bed. She made her way to the bathroom to brush her teeth and take a shower. When she had showered, she then grabbed some clothes, and because her son had been a little too distracted yesterday, she decided to wear black cargo pants and a red sports bra, but she also decided to put a red t-shirt over it this time. Her hair was in a perfect ponytail reaching her waist, and her headband sat perfectly on her forehead. With one last look in the mirror, she gave her a little smack and gave herself thumbs up before going downstairs for breakfast. She wanted Naruto to be punctual and get organized on his own, which is why she didn't even go near his room to wake him, because if he was still asleep then she would come back and drag him herself, but knowing him, he was most likely long gone. She left the house and made her way through the village, and she was on time as she had about half an hour left, and she suddenly heard someone call her name. Ah, Kushina-sama. She turned around to see a young blonde-haired girl. Kushina recognized her as Yamanaka Ino. Good morning, Ino, how can I help you? Kushina asked with a smile. She could see her two teammates standing a bit back eyeing her. Probably shy, she gave them both a smile and waved, which they quickly returned before looking away. Morning, we are looking for training ground 22. Can you please tell us where it is? Ino asked. Yesterday they had been on ground 1 and there were so many different grounds. Ino, there is a total of 100 training grounds. The first one is behind the Hokage monument, and from there on the number moves clockwise, so just move east from the mountain till you reach 22. Kushina responded. Thank you so much. You would think we would be given a map to direct us there. Ino said with a bow before she and her group left. Training ground. Arriving at her training ground, Kushina saw Naruto, who was currently doing some stretches. Good morning, Naruto. Kushina greeted him. Good morning, sensei. He said, trying to hold eye contact with her. Let me join you, Kushina said as she joined in Naruto's exercises. After stretching their arms and legs, Kushina got on all fours and told him to get behind her. He did as she asked and just stared at her plump round, which was only centimeters from his waist. She then smoothly touched the ground with her toned stomach, and then Naruto helped her get back up on all fours. It was incredibly hot seeing her cargo pants straining around her tight, further arousing him, proven so by his hardening. Are we going to have our first mission today, sensei? Naruto asked, excited, still staring at her butt, although he also wanted to start making a name for himself. No, not today. I want to cover some basics before we start doing anything. Now we will start with a morning run. You will follow me in a straight line. Of course, as soon as she had said that, Naruto just stayed a few steps behind so that he had a clear view of her firm. They were headed for training ground 17 where she would take a small break before starting another exercise she planned last night. It was a small 6 miles run. When they were halfway was the first time she turned around to look at him. Naruto immediately met her eyes, making it obvious as to where he was looking before she turned. When they finally came to a stop, Naruto just calmly sat down to slow down his breathing and take a break while Kushina got something to drink. "Alright Naruto, now for the second exercise," Kushina said cheerfully. "What is it?" Naruto calmly asked. Naruto's stamina astounded her. He was really exceptional. He could train for hours without breaks and still be willing to do more, which made her think about how long he would last when having. She couldn't deny that she did feel a little excited at the thought. "Yes, now I suggest you strip down to your underwear." That caused Naruto to blush, and despite him being really perverted, he was still inexperienced as he had only learned about women from Jiraiya and books, so he slowly got out of his clothes, showing his developing but lean muscles. "All right, Naruto, you know from yesterday that I reward exceptional performance. However, I will also punish you if your performance is poor. Now in 30 minutes, you have to swim across this lake, 100 m, and then run around back here, 150 meters, where you will do 10 push-ups, and then repeat. If you succeed in doing 5 laps, you will get rewarded, but if you don't even manage 3, you will be punished." "Understood?" Kushina asked as she held up her beloved stopwatch. Naruto nodded and Kushina gave him the go. He dived in the water. If you were to get 5 laps, you would have to get each lap in 6 minutes, which did seem like a lot but should be easy for Naruto. However, this exercise quickly drains energy, and after 2 laps she will see if he will easily be able to do it. Kushina sat down on the grass, holding a pen and a piece of paper, counting his laps. She watched extra carefully, knowing Naruto he would be trying his best, so she just wanted to see his physical capability. Naruto finished his first round quite fast. In just 4 minutes, he quickly threw himself down onto his stomach and began doing push-ups. "This is easy, sensei," Naruto boasted as he quickly finished and jumped back into the water, and Kushina gave him 1 point. Kushina found herself nervously twitching as she saw Naruto going with confidence in his stride, so maybe she actually had to come up with a reward. Should it just be the same as yesterday or something else maybe? Naruto used 3.5 minutes swimming across. He ran around the lake for his last lap and he quickly fell down on his knees, starting on his final push-ups. 1 minute left, Naruto, she reminded him as he strained his muscles to push himself up while he started to steady his breathing with each push-up. When he finished, he fell to the ground on his back, his head turned to look at her. "So how did I do?" he asked whilst catching his breath. "You did it with 37 seconds left." Despite knowing what this meant, Kushina knew it was brilliant motivation for Naruto, so she just thought hell with it. Naruto stood a couple of meters away from his sensei and was facing towards the lake when Kushina entered his view. "You are only to look but not touch," Kushina said seriously, disappointing him, but honestly he was fine with just looking at his goddess of a mom. However, when Kushina pulled up her t-shirt, Naruto was shocked since she also pulled her sports bra, leaving her bare beautiful S to jiggle on full display for him and him only. They were big, plump and looked heavy, her small areola and were rosy pink. Oh, the things he wanted to do to them. However, the show was cut short as she pulled her bra and t-shirt back down again. "Now let's go get some dinner, my treat, and then we will come back for one final exercise. Don't worry, it won't be as long as this one," Kushina assured him and motioned him to follow. He quickly got in stride beside her and just admired her beautiful features. "Let's go get some barbecue," Kushina said with a smile, knowing her son was still eyeing her. Naruto was sat across from Kushina and they had just finished their food. He was getting bored just sitting here, so he just looked around, admiring the people. He wanted to get on with today's training so that he can win another reward. He was getting really excited just thinking about what kind of reward his sensei would give him next. Just then he saw Anko arrive and he knew that she was going to come and tease him and his mom a little like usual. Anko was a beautiful woman with violet hair put in a spiky ponytail and wore a long coat with fishnets underneath. She was a friend of his mom, so he knew her pretty closely. Anko just waved at him from behind Kushina while she walked towards them. He just watched with raised eyebrows as she slipped onto the seat beside him and placed an arm around his shoulder to push him into the side of her S, which she seemed to love doing. "Hey Anko-chan, it's good to see you too." Naruto greeted her. Kushina just looked on as her son struggled to get out of Anko's grip. "On Naruto-kun, so you are on Kushi-chan's team. Hey Kushi-chan, you did get lucky, getting Naruto on your team. He is such a perverted young boy." Anko teased Naruto whilst also greeting Kushina. "Ow ow ow, let me go Anko-chan." Naruto whimpered. He did like the feeling of her S on the side of his face, as it just reminded him of how soft were and his Anko-chan was quite, so he didn't mind at all, but she was using a lot of strength. "You don't have to grip so hard, you know," he grumbled, rubbing his neck when Anko finally let him go. "Anko, how many times do I have to tell you to not encourage him, especially not in public? If you keep this up, he will only become more of a pervert than he already is. And Naruto, let's get back to training before you two embarrass me further," Kushina told them with sigh, causing Anko to pout. "That's mean Kushi-chan, I am just helping my Naruto-kun grow up faster. He has already learned about girls, now he just needs some experience," Anko said before her eyes went back onto the young boy she was so familiar with and sent him a grin. "Anko, just let him be for now, you are really not helping the situation," Kushina said, having given up against the two of them. Anko just eyed the grinning boy. She could easily see that he would grow up to be quite a specimen, while Naruto just admired the two curvy junins. "Anko-chan, I am ready to get some experience if you are so willing to help," Naruto cheekily said as he sent her a smirk. He was just joking around as usual, but this time he wanted to see how his sensei would react. "Ah, you just want a go at your Anko-chan, don't you?" Anko questioned him slyly, knowing he would blush at the implication as she ruffled his hair, and sure enough he had a blush but also looked quite excited. "Anko, go bother Kuranai, we can talk when I am done later. I really don't want to deal with the both of you at the same time," Kushina said, trying to get her to leave before her student opened his mouth and spoke a little too much. She was also annoyed at Naruto for liking his Anko-chan so much. She might have to up her rewards a little. "But Kushi-chan, I'm bored. I want to watch you guys train, and maybe who knows, I might even join in," Anko complained as she was being pushed outside by Kushina. "You and Naruto can have fun later if you want. See you later Anko," Kushina finally said before she gave Anko a harder push. So what now sensei?" Naruto asked with a head tilt. It was quite a cute look with him looking so curious. "I will tell you as soon we are back at the training ground, so let's go." Kushina then paid for their food and the duo headed towards their training ground for today's final exercise. Training ground. "Alright, we are here. Spending some time with Anko has done you some good, as you seem better at controlling your perverted urges, a lot better than Jiraiya at least. As you already know, like me, Anko is a bit of a tease, but she is just much more straightforward about it. I know you have been happy about the rewards, but if Anko knew, I wouldn't hear the end of it. So don't get too excited when you two are teasing each other and spill all about our secret rewards to her of all people," Kushina explained to him with a stern look, to which he nodded with conviction. She knew she wasn't cheating or anything. He was just a boy, her son, but a boy nonetheless, who was no older than 12, so people didn't really need to know about their team activities. "Don't worry Mom, I already promised I won't tell anyone," Naruto assured, and Kushina knew that as well, as she fully trusted him, but she was more worried in how he would act if someone else found out about their fun, as he had quite a temper when angry. He seems to get even more pissed if it has anything to do with her. He had already been in fights with his classmates when they made inappropriate remarks about her. "Alright, let's just get on with the training. We have one final exercise for today and then we can go home. What I want you to do is to climb that tree." For a short moment he looked confused before Kushina demonstrated by starting to walk up a tree, and then it dawned on him. Oh, it's a chakra control exercise. I read about it in a book, sensei. Naruto said as he looked at Kushina hanging with her head down while her feet were on a branch before getting back on the ground with a back flip. Kushina was quite happy hearing about him reading books, because at first he couldn't read a sentence without getting distracted, so she had to read it to him, but he has been gradually getting better, and now it seems like he has been reading a lot of books on his own, seeing as he already knew chakra control exercises. Alright, the key is to gather exactly the right amount of chakra in your feet and stabilize it. If you use too much chakra you will be pushed off, and if you use too little you will fall off. That's what we are going to use our last 2 hours on. Any questions? Kushina asked. Naruto, being curious and feeling bold, decided to ask, can I still win something? Oh right, since I know it makes you work harder. If your performance stays good there is always a chance to get a reward as for this time. Kushina finished with throwing a kunai into a neighboring tree. If you manage to get that kunai back to me using this technique you will get a reward. Kushina told him with a smile. Naruto just stared at the kunai, trying to measure how high it was with a focused look. He quickly pushed his hands together and started to form chakra in his feet. When he thought he had the right amount, he tried to walk up the side of the tree, but his feet didn't really stick, so he just slipped off the tree. His second try, he actually got his feet to stick to the tree, but as soon as he tried to take step he fell on his back. Don't worry Naruto, it will take time and we will continue to work on this tomorrow. Kushina encouraged him as she fell down onto the grass and enjoyed the sun, or well she tried to. She watched as he continued getting angrier. Naruto resorted to just glare at the tree as he tried to calm down. Kushina deciding to motivate her student a little further, so she walked right past Naruto and up to the top of the tree as his eyes followed her to see what she was up to. When she was on a strong branch she turned away from him and bent over a little, pushing out her, and then dropped something from her hand without turning around. Oops. As soon as he heard that he followed where the object was dropped on the ground and he saw his sensei's all-red sports bra. He gulped and slowly lifted his gaze from the bra and back up towards where she was on the tree, but only saw her back. Now with a face of concentration, he tried again, and this time Naruto stood with both feet planted on the tree. Slowly and carefully he took a step and then another, but when he tried to spot where his sensei was he lost control and fell on his back. He tried again and again, but he kept losing control halfway up the tree. Ah, too bad, and here I thought someone would help me put it back on. Kushina said as she walked down from the other side of the tree, which is why he couldn't see her but saw her back as she picked up her bra and put it back on without turning around. Naruto immediately stood back up and closed his eyes and took few small breaths. Then tried again with a mind clear of thoughts about his sensei, and he slowly was already halfway to the kunai when the time ran out, and his Kushina sensei, who was already back at her sitting spot, said that this will be his final try. Kushina watched quite proud. Usually something like this would take a lot longer. Not that Naruto had perfected it, as his steps were quite unstable, but he had made it further than she expected him to. He took another step closer. You can do it, Naruto. You know what you will get if you do. Kushina cheered him but didn't realize that her mentioning his reward would only distract him. He was right beside the kunai and he was just about to grab it when he heard her, and his feet immediately slipped under him. Thinking quickly, Naruto shot his legs onto the tree as soon as he had slipped and pushed himself up to yank the kunai out. He then flipped and landed on the ground with his knees bent and the kunai firmly held in his right hand. Does that count? He asked nervously because he really wanted to impress his sensei. Yes, I guess it does. Kushina answered with a small smile. She was proud that he actually made it to the kunai in just few attempts. Now for your reward, I will let you choose. You can either choose the same as the last 2 times, Kushina answered with a smile as he turned scarlet red. Sensei, actually. Kushina could barely hear his words when Naruto just decided to grab her hand as he realized that it was getting late, so there was a chance some other teams might come this way. Kushina wasn't sure where he was taking her and what he was going to ask, seeing him so nervous, and with that thought she let herself be pulled by Naruto towards the dense woods. She quickly looked at her watch and realized why he was going towards the trees, because other teams would be passing through here soon. So she followed him and let him take her further into the woods. Now she was really curious and apprehensive as to what he was going to ask. Soon they were almost completely surrounded by tall thick trees and bushes. Sensei, I think this far is fine. Yeah, no one should be able to see us here. I am really curious now, and why are you so nervous? Kushina asked, to which he just rubbed the back of his head with a nervous chuckle. You don't have to be so nervous, Naruto, we have to trust each other, so don't worry and just tell me. Kushina stated before she straightened her t-shirt so that a little of her cleavage was visible, not too much, as she didn't want anyone in the village getting a look at her ass. She did like the attention, but she didn't want to show them any more skin, as they might get the wrong idea that she was flaunting her body and encouraging them. The only one I am trying to encourage is my Naru-chan, so only he is gonna get to see more of me. Kushina's thoughts went on. Wait, why did I just think that? Kushina pondered with a pink tint to her cheeks. Alright mom, can I request a different reward? He asked, causing Kushina to shake her head to clear her thoughts and give him a skeptical look. Sure, but do keep in mind that there are certain things that we can't do. With that said, she just rubbed her thumb nervously over her wedding ring that she still wore, as she didn't have the heart to just move on from Minato yet, even if it had been 12 years. I know, but, can I please kiss you? He ended in a quiet tone, and he quickly started looking around, not meeting her eyes, because he didn't want to push his mom too much that she would stop these rewards. Meanwhile, Kushina looked shocked, and much to her own disbelief she was actually blushing. Now she knew why he was so nervous before asking for a kiss and why he wanted to walk all the way into the woods. Oh I'm flattered and all, but I don't really think I can, Naru-chan. Wouldn't that be going a bit far? Kushina asked. She could feel her heart beating in her chest, and kissing Naruto would be going a little too far considering he was still her son. I'm sorry if I'm asking for too much, but I think you are really beautiful and I want my first kiss to be with you. He said as he grabbed both of her hands with both of his, while his blue eyes looked straight into her violet ones. Kushina's face was scarlet just like her hair. Maybe just a little kiss would be okay. She had already kissed him on his cheeks anyway, and the fact that the taste wouldn't last for long anyway. Alright, I give up, however I will stop it if you try anything else, and there will definitely be no tongue. Kushina pointed out her rules, but Naruto didn't mind either of them as he looked at her with a smile, quickly getting closer to her. They both got down onto their knees so they could match each other's height, as Naruto's height was only slightly below her shoulders. Kushina watched how his face slowly approached hers. Slowly Naruto closed his sapphire blue eyes when his lips were only inches from hers, and finally Kushina sneaked her hands around her student's waist to steady herself when their lips touched. I can't believe I'm actually kissing mom, she tastes sweet and her lips are so soft against mine. Naruto thought as their kiss slowly deepened. Their lips moved both with and against each other at every chance. It was a soft kiss. Both Naruto and Kushina were very insecure. This was Naruto's first kiss, so he was inexperienced, and it had been a long time since Kushina had gotten a proper long kiss like this one. Should I try to move my tongue against her lips? I really shouldn't try anything because she might back off. Naruto wondered. The kiss was beginning to grow in passion, but he also needed to breathe. Then he realized that his sensei seemed really into the kiss, so deciding to take a small chance, he slowly moved his hands lower that were placed on Kushina's waist a little further down until they were hovering close to her round and firm, covered by her tight pants. Gently and very carefully, while their lips were still engaged in a firm lip lock, Naruto placed his hands on her rear, slowly starting to squeeze it in his palm. She didn't pull away or grab his hand, instead letting him get away with it, and quickly as to not miss this golden opportunity he carried on fondling her rear. Feeling both his hands squeezing her, she just edged in approval. Finally, with big gasps for air, they separated from each other, Both had red faces and Kushina's mind was racing at what she had just done. Thank you, sensei. That was incredible. Naruto said, leaning in closer to her, going for a second kiss cheekily. Sorry buddy, but from what I felt you have already been rewarded twice. Kushina pointed out as she took his hands off her butt. Kushina then stood up to slowly move away from him. I actually just made out with mom. Oh man, what if someone finds out, but I can't help it. Mom is just so hot, Naruto thought, only now beginning to process what he had just done. Naruto was snapped out of his thoughts when Kushina turned his head and surprised him by giving him a peck on the lips. That's for being a surprisingly good kisser. Training ground 1 tomorrow at 8 and I won't remind you about it at home, so you better remember it, got it? Kushina told him. And with that she was gone in a gust of wind, leaving Naruto with a raging boner. Looking around to making sure no one was near, he just fell back in bliss while stroking his boner through trousers. Uzumaki Mansion. Kushina felt cold water spray down upon her. She had gotten too excited. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Just playing around wasn't supposed to have you guilt tripping. Stepping out of the water, she put on a robe. Naruto was probably home as he usually goes to meet up with his friends after their training, but she had taken a long shower so she should go and prepare dinner. Kushina was standing in the kitchen when she heard the front door being slammed shut. Peeking out of the kitchen she saw a very giddy Naruto. Hello honey, why are you so happy? Kushina asked nervously. Mom, you know exactly why, but I am in an even better mood because I found out that Kakashi Onichan has been making his team do just D-rank missions while I have been training and getting rewards from you. Ha ha ha. Naruto just carried on laughing at Team 7's misery. Naruto, everyone begins with D-rank missions, I did too when I was your age. Kushina explained. She knew Naruto saw Sasuke as his rival, so that's probably why he was so happy to hear about their D-rank missions. Especially since she knew Naruto liked to show off, which just made her sigh. Naruto, don't tell anyone about our training, it will give you an element of surprise, okay? And if you weren't my son and had teammates, I would have made you and your team do D-rank missions to improve your teamwork as well. Kushina sternly told him. Alright, I guess you're right mom, but that doesn't change the fact that I am doing better than Team 7. Naruto boasted before moving towards the staircase. I am also getting some pretty good rewards from my beautiful sensei, let me know when food's ready. Naruto said in a low voice with a grin, and that was the last thing she heard before she heard him whistling whilst going up the stairs. She blushed at the compliment and him mentioning their teamwork exercises, and just got back to making dinner with a smile on her face. The evening went on as it used to, with Kushina and Naruto eating dinner with him just constantly smirking at her. She was quite surprised that he hadn't tried anything with her at home, but it was probably because he didn't want to ruin this student and teacher relationship that they had going, which she was happy with. She then cleaned around the house and went to sleep, but while she was lying in bed she still felt like she could taste Naruto on her lips, and even worse, it was a taste that she actually liked. The next morning was like all the others. She prepared herself. She dressed in all black except for her green Junin vest. She put her hair back into a ponytail before heading out the door. Today Team 9 would have their first mission, but first Naruto would have to master the tree climbing exercise so that he wouldn't stumble and could do it while fighting and not just stand on a tree for a few minutes. Training ground. Kushina was almost at the training ground when she sensed Naruto there. She was glad he was always on time for their training, and she was sure that it was because of her. Before his graduation he was always late for his academy, but he always did his work on time, so she didn't say anything to him for being late as long as he got his work done. She was soon out of the trees and was walking into the training ground. True enough, she saw Naruto slowly and with careful steps walking up and down a tree with a book in his hand, and his clothes had a few rips and dirt spots on them, which implied that he had been practicing this for a while and had fallen off more than a few times. Kushina smiled at the sight. Seeing his commitment to his training made her proud that he wasn't just having fun and slacking with his training. She then walked closer to him. Morning Naruto. She greeted him. Morning sensei. I have been practicing my chakra control by doing the tree walking exercise, Naruto informed Kushina. Naruto wanted to show her that he wasn't just a horny pervert but he was a ninja who wanted to improve his skills and make progress through hard work because he actually wanted to become strong so that he could protect his mom and his village. But then again he was still a pervert taught by the self-proclaimed, super pervert, Jiraiya Sennin, so he also wanted to get rewarded by his voluptuous MILF of a sensei who was also his mom, but that is besides the point. Good work Naruto, if you keep training like this you will surely surpass your dad and me in no time. Kushina praised him with a smile on her face. Seeing him train so hard had just made her mood better and she knew exactly how to boost his confidence so that he would listen to her and train even harder to ensure that he was ready for some high-rank missions. Tell you what Naruto, if you spar with me on that tree for 2 minutes without losing balance you get another kiss, how does that sound? Kushina told with a small smirk on her face, knowing he wouldn't back down from a challenge, especially with a kiss from her as a reward. She wasn't sure if she should allow him to kiss her again, but he seemed to really like it and she actually enjoyed it herself considering she hadn't kissed anyone in the last 12 years, and with Naruto the kiss was passionate, and since he was so inexperienced Kushina felt quite aroused, taking the lead and guiding him during the kiss while he just followed her. Naruto was quick to recover from the shock and confidently got ready near the tree he was on earlier, and when she was beside him with a quick go, they both bolted up the tree with Kushina being a lot faster and getting ahead of him, then turning around with kick aimed at his head which he blocked with his forearm. Naruto had to flinch from the power behind it and they then both started a flurry of attacks on each other with Kushina not even trying, just playing around with him. Eventually though she bent down and kicked the side of his ankle making him fall of the tree. Naruto was really upset that he fell off. He was sure that he would be able to stick to the tree a lot longer than that. He just shook his head and decided to lie down on the ground on his back feeling disappointed. Kushina was quite surprised that he didn't even realize how long they had been fighting on that tree for. It had been around 4.5 minutes and she was quite impressed with his performance. She walked by his downed form and away from him to grab her bottle of water to take a sip as her throat was quite dry. Kushina then turned around and called his name, and as he turned over to look at her she decided he deserved a reward, so she just said sultrily, "Naru-chan, I believe you deserve a reward for your performance, so come and get it." She blew a kiss to him afterwards which made him dash straight towards her. Sluao Dao. Kushina let out an embarrassing sound when Naruto had gotten close enough. He had jumped on her, pushing her onto the ground on her back, then caught her in his embrace and he wasted no time quickly smashing his lips on hers. Kushina was quite shocked but quickly recovered as she began to kiss back while she was on her back with Naruto on top. Naruto could barely even believe this was actually happening. He was kissing the hottest MILF in the entire world for the second time. He wished he had Sharingan to record this very moment and keep it as a precious memory, or maybe he could take a picture, but it might anger her and he really wanted to keep playing with Kushina, so he let that thought disappear. While their kiss continued, Naruto had slowly opened his eyes a little, turning his head slightly to peek down and see that gravity was applying its magic to his sensei's big round pillows. Naruto decided to try to grab her s this time, and just like their last kiss, Kushina didn't even try to stop him as one of his hands went lower and slowly pushed up against Kushina's heavy round firm. While they were kissing each other he couldn't help but also go for her s, and they were surprisingly heavy. Kushina didn't reject his touch, so once again he got away with it as slowly his other hand cupped her other. He carefully rubbed them in his hands and pushed his hands up against her s, letting them rest in his palms. Naruto, growing bolder by every second, stuck his tongue out and tried to slip it into Kushina's mouth, but when it passed by her lips it was stopped by her teeth, and this time Kushina actually drew back from the kiss. Naruto was a little disappointed. He knew he was only supposed to get one kiss, but he could still have held his breath for a couple more seconds. "No tongue, understood?" Kushina said, completely ignoring Naruto's hands that were still occupied with holding and squeezing her round s. Sorry mom, but can we do a little more please? Naruto pleaded now that he had regained some of his breath, and to his shock Kushina quickly mashed their lips back together, making him think that he was the luckiest pervert ever. Their lips continued to push against each other for another minute before they finally broke apart. Kushina weakly removed Naruto's hands from her tits and slowly got up. She needed to show some restraint even though she was horny as hell, but she would endure so that the situation doesn't get out of hand. Kushina had to admit one thing though, that Naruto left her yearning for more. The way he had pushed her onto her back and just slammed his lips against hers, she wanted more of that feeling. Well, I guess that was fun, but we really should start training now. Naruto, you will spar with my clone this time while I will watch as the judge. When we are done we will get our first mission together, Kushina said as they finally started the day. When they were done with the spar she informed him. We should stop here. Alright, now let's go and get our first mission. She cheered as she turned around and began to leave. She expected her student to follow her, but when she turned around he just stood silently and looked down at the ground. Is something wrong? Kushina awkwardly questioned. Kushina-sensei, it's just, I really like kissing you and I just want to know if we will do it again, kiss I mean. Naruto exclaimed. Kushina had a small blush on her face. She honestly was flattered that he liked their kiss so much. Come on Naruto, we are just doing this for the fun of it and I have already let you kiss me twice when we shouldn't be kissing at all. We can do many other fun things, you know. Kushina pleaded, trying to reason with him. Is it because I am bad at it? Naruto asked, just feeling let down, and for once he didn't even do his dramatic sigh with watery eyes. No, you are a really good kisser and it felt great. Kushina was cut off by Naruto. I know we shouldn't be kissing, but if it felt great so there is no reason to stop, please mom. Naruto begged, as he came close and hugged her. I will think about it, okay? Kushina asked, but her student just stared at her. I guess we can do it sometimes if you perform well, of course. Kushina said as a big smile finally appeared on his face as she reassured herself that she was doing this to make Naruto happy and help him with his training. Woohoo! Mom, you are the best! Naruto just shouted loudly and started celebrating, which made her smile. She knew that she shouldn't be doing this with anyone, let alone her son, but it just felt so good and satisfying, especially seeing Naruto so happy. She shook her head to clear her thoughts and just laughed at Naruto doing flips. She was helping him become a strong ninja, so to her their ministrations seemed worth it in the end. Naruto and Kushina went on their first mission as a team, which was AD rank 1, and Naruto was extremely disappointed with it. She knew how much Naruto loved action and was sure that he would get bored, so she was ready to calm him down when he did complain to her. She also made it clear to him that he wouldn't be able to go on a higher rank mission unless he did a handful of these. It's been such a long time since she did AD rank mission herself, but she knew how boring they could be. Kushina was only going to make him go on these kinds of missions so that he would learn to stay calm in all situations as well as get some experience, and it was easy money anyway. Uzumaki Mansion. Kushina was currently lying in her bed with her eyes closed. Kushina, what exactly are you trying to do with your son? Kushina was sitting still in a giant black room. The only thing inside would be her and the giant nine-tailed fox that was laying down on its belly with 4 chains keeping it bound to the ground right behind her. What are you talking about, Kyuubi? I am doing whatever any sensei would and train him to become a great ninja. Kushina responded as she backed into the giant fox's soft fur. To me it just seems like an affair, you know, with all that kissing and groping. Not that I mind. I hate your husband for resealing half of me inside of you and the other half in your son, so just knowing you are having fun with Naruto makes me feel better. The Kyuubi replied with a snort. You know I am his mother, so it's my responsibility to make sure that he is ready to be a ninja and is strong enough to fight anyone without difficulty. As for the rewards I have been giving him, I can't help it, he is such a little pervert that I don't think anything else will motivate him enough to even try. You have seen it yourself how hard he starts trying as soon as he knows he will get a reward. why am I explaining myself to you anyway? Why do you care? Kushina asked the Kyuubi with a huff as she jumped up onto its snout and looked the fox straight into its red-slitted eyes. I really don't care whatever you two get up to. I'm simply looking for a way to amuse myself. If I have to spend the rest of my life in here, I might as well try to know what you are doing. Besides, I found it funny that my former host had a period just like the one you are going through. Mito used to be seriously aroused, but she had inspiring self-control, though staying around Hashirama, who she happened to have taken a fancy to, just pushed her over the tipping point, and then the rest is history. Kyuubi informed Kushina with a statement sure did shock Kushina a little, since she had no idea that that's how Mito and Hashirama's relationship started, and when she was little she also used to look up to Mito as an idol. Are you trying to get back at Minato? Because if that's the case, then it won't happen. Sure, I like to play and fool around with my student, but he is also my son, and I still don't think I would find anyone who would be as good as Minato was, so your words don't have any effect on me whatsoever. Kushina proclaimed with a proud little smirk on her face as she stared at the Kyuubi almost like she was giving it a challenge. There was a small silence between them until Kyuubi sent images of Mito getting in both of her holes by Hashirama and his wood clone. Kushina stared at the screen in shock. She even remembered that room. Sure, it was a little different, but when she was little she used to visit a much older Mito in that exact room. Kushina took a step back in shock when she found herself admiring the scene in front of her. Fortunately for Kushina, the images disappeared because for some reason she couldn't take her eyes off it and just kept imagining herself in Mito's position with Naruto and his clone. I'm still not sure how nobody noticed how much time those two seemed to spend in their bedroom, and they kept disappearing, leaving clones to do their work. Just goes to show how stupid you humans are, not even able to sense clones. Trust me, Kushina, I don't have any ulterior motive. I just wanted to show you how history is repeating itself. Mito started off much like you, but then her arousal took over and she couldn't control herself. It was just a good thing that Hashirama kept her satisfied back when all of this started, otherwise she was so horny that she would have slept with anyone. Kyuubi revealed Mito's past to Kushina, who was deep in thought. Unfortunately for you, your bastard husband is dead, so you are getting aroused by your son, who looks almost exactly the same. Your son also loves you and is obsessed with your body, so that doesn't help either. Just carry on having fun with Naruto and see where it takes you, and do try to keep me entertained. The Kyuubi finished with a grin showing its razor-sharp teeth. Kushina bolted awake in her bed, looking straight up at the ceiling. With a nervous smile she thought, I will always love Minato and nothing is ever going to change that. She tried to reassure herself but had lingering thoughts of an older Naruto with her in the back of her head. A week later. A week had passed since her enlightening conversation with the Kyuubi, and since then Kushina felt like her tension had intensified, and it gets worse when she is around Naruto, so yeah, Kushina had been masturbating a lot this entire week. Kushina and Naruto had been running around Konoha doing D-rank missions. On one of the missions where they had helped a young Chunin, something weird happened. The young Chunin had been eyeing her a lot. He was around the age of 17 and they were helping him move into a new apartment, and when they had placed everything, she had walked back to stand close to the door near Naruto to allow the young Chunin to look through his boxes to make sure nothing was missing. She was lost in her thoughts when a hand landed on her right cheek with a smack, and then another on her left cheek while she went completely rigid. She had been really horny this entire week, so she felt pleasure course through her due to the feeling of Naruto's hands on her rear. Naruto moved closer to her so that he could whisper, "You like me spanking your, don't you, mom?" Completely oblivious to them, the young Chunin carried on looking through his stuff while Naruto groped and squeezed her while also giving it a few smacks. She knew why Naruto was doing this, because since the start of this mission the Chunin had been eyeing her and she had only given him a sultry smile back in return, so she guessed that Naruto didn't really like that. Naruto's spanking was really arousing her. She should stop him before their client turned around, but she couldn't help the urge to just tease him on how jealous he got when someone looked at her body. Without turning around she replied back to Naruto, "Oh, so you didn't like how he looked at me, did you, Naruto? Well, guess what? I liked. On. Naruto's groping had immediately stopped and he gave her an even harder slap on her, making her loudly. This time though the Chunin heard it and turned around to see her gasping for breath, so he just looked at her with a puzzled expression on his face. She recovered and quickly glanced to her right to see that before the Chunin had even turned around, Naruto had moved to lean against the wall while holding a book with a smirk on his face, pretending as if he didn't just slap her. She realized that it probably looked weird that she was standing by herself gasping and ing loudly. She just nervously chuckled and scratched the back of her head just like Naruto when he was nervous or embarrassed. Thank you for your help. Young Chunin informed them that their mission was finished. So after taking a few calm breaths, she turned and walked out the door with Naruto following her. Kushina was still quite shocked that Naruto would actually spank her, knowing that they could easily have gotten caught, but just knowing that they could have been caught made Naruto spanking her all the more pleasurable, and it aroused her even more. Naruto, I know what you did there, so know this, that your little competition is on and I will get you back for this at some point, so you better be careful. Kushina told him with a heated look straight into his eyes, which he didn't back down from. Instead he walked towards her with his hand out for a handshake, so she shook his hand. She is going to be really patient with this and catch him when he least expects it. I accept your challenge, so you better watch out too, Mom, and I am starving, let's get some ramen on the way. Naruto said to her with a wide grin on his face. They quickly went straight to Hokage Tower afterwards to finish their mission. While Naruto had started thinking about what kind of ramen he should have today as he walked next to her. My Naru-chan really doesn't like anyone eyeing me, does he? Kushina thought whilst also reminiscing about how much Naruto's spanking had turned her on. She couldn't get the feeling of his hands on her out of her head no matter how hard she tried. The rest of the week was also fun, but her son was getting bored of the D-rank missions, so she felt like having fun with him, especially after what he did to her. She asked him to compete in a pranking competition with her, and since Naruto wasn't the type to back down from a challenge, they had both gone on a pranking spree on everyone in Konoha that they could find. She still remembered their other challenge, but she was going to be patient and catch him completely off guard. Of course, since Kushina was a lot more experienced and skilled, she won their pranking competition, but you could never know with Naruto, he really was unpredictable. Maybe he would have had a better chance if he wasn't constantly distracted by beautiful women, which just made her eyebrow twitch for some reason. Was she jealous that he was eyeing them and not her? Now in Hokage's office, Kushina stood in front of the Sandaime with her student behind her. Team 9 has completed another mission. Kushina said with a stoic face. It was a bit awkward for everyone since they knew each other so closely, but nonetheless they all act professionally while inside this office. How are you, Naruto, my boy? I hope you haven't been causing too much trouble for your mother. Sarutobi greeted him with a smile. I have been good, Gigi. Naruto quickly replied back while Kushina cut in afterwards. He has been good, Sandaime-sama, and can we get another mission? Kushina told the Sandaime. Naruto noticed that his Gigi had his back turned while looking down in some cabinets for a scroll. Naruto's eyes finally landed onto Kushina's firm and her reminded him of their challenge, so seizing this opportunity, he carefully stepped closer and proving that he was much more of a risk-taker than anyone expected him to be, his palm made contact with Kushina's rear and he wasn't spotted. Kushina visibly stiffened the moment his hand landed on her, but she didn't turn or grab it, so feeling extremely brave with a mischievous glint in his eyes, he squeezed Kushina's soft but yet firm cheek, while quietly telling her, I got you twice now, Mom, which just brought an annoyed expression onto her face. Naruto saw much to his surprise that Sandaime still hadn't turned around, so he kept on fondling his mom's perfect butt. Here it is. Naruto's hand retreated almost immediately. Kushina also somehow managed to keep her face void of emotions. Before Sarutobi gave Kushina the mission, he opened it to look at it himself. Kushina, you remember the mission I gave Team 7, right? Sarutobi asked casually, completely changing his professional attitude from earlier. Yes. Kushina's tone was quite low, which surprised Naruto. Well, there were some complications. Sarutobi continued. What kind of complications? Her words weren't even directed towards him, but Naruto began to slowly take a few steps backwards anyway. He really didn't feel like being on the receiving end if his mom got angry. Well, the mission went up from C rank to an A- rank. Sarutobi said while Naruto just watched, wondering what his mom would say, but an interruption came in the form of Konohamaru barging in. Prepare to be replaced, old man. A little boy yelled while barging inside the Hokage's office, while Sarutobi just sighed loudly. The boy, while running towards the Hokage, suddenly tripped on his scarf and fell on his face. He quickly got up and looked around, and when he saw Naruto, he pointed at him. Boss, you tripped me, he said with a smirk. No, I didn't, Konohamaru, you tripped on your oversized scarf. Naruto deadpanned with a sweat drop. If that was all, Hokage-sama, I will be on my way. Naruto heard Kushina say as she turned around to face him. Let's go, Naruto. She politely asked him with a small smile and closed eyes. Her expression kind of looked like death itself, which told him that she was angry and annoyed, while Naruto just had one thought going through his head. Mom would make a very mistress of death. So while she left the office, Naruto quickly said, "See you later, Gigi and Kono," and turned to follow her and started whistling to himself as he walked. While inside the office, Sandaime was just watching them leave when he realized that his grandson had barged in and saw him trying to sneak outside the office to follow Naruto. Kushina and Naruto were just leaving the Hokage building when Kushina sensed a shuriken flying towards Naruto and Konohamaru following it. Kushina saw that Naruto caught both Konohamaru and the weirdly shaped wooden shuriken in each hand with ease. Oi, let me go, Konohamaru yelled as Naruto held him in the air with a strong grip on his t-shirt. Naruto, you better know that I will get you back for that stunt inside the office, and meet me by the gate in 1 hour. Kushina told him with a forced smile, and after getting a grin in return, she left him with the Sandaime Hokage's grandson to prepare for their mission. Now why would you follow me, Konohamaru? I just said see you later, didn't I? Naruto asked with his usually happy tone and a teasing smirk. Boss, you were ready just like I thought you would be, Konohamaru said with a big grin. Alright, Konohamaru, so how have you been? Naruto asked with a smile. He treated Konohamaru like his little brother. I have been good, boss. Please take me as your disciple so I can get stronger and beat the Hokage, Konohamaru proclaimed. I am going to have to say sorry for that, as I won't be able to teach you because firstly I am way too young to be teaching you how to beat the Hokage, and secondly I am kind of busy with my sensei, so maybe later. Why do you want to beat the Hokage again? Naruto questioned. He was sure Konohamaru told him at one point, but he may not have been paying attention to their conversation. Naruto was headed towards Sandaime Hokage's home, or as he liked to call him, Gigi. Because I only get recognized as Sandaime Hokage's grandson. I want people to know who I am and what I can do, Konohamaru said with a sad expression, causing Naruto to sigh. He knew the feeling, as he himself was mostly recognized as Yondaime Hokage's son. I know you will eventually get recognized, Kono, so don't worry about it and just have fun with your friends. I believe in you, Naruto told him with a smile, and the next thing Konohamaru knew was that he landed on the ground on his bottom while Naruto disappeared in a smoke cloud, revealing that he had been a clone. Konohamaru just smiled, knowing that his Naruto Onichan believed in him. 1 hour later, Kushina and Naruto were moving quickly on the road. The Land of Waves was a small country just south of the Land of Fire. Normally it would take 3 days to walk there, but if they moved fast, then hopefully they could reach it by tomorrow evening. Naruto had intentionally forgotten his tent to see if his mom would let him share with her, otherwise he would happily sleep outside. He really didn't mind it as long as he had a chance at sleeping next to her. When it was nighttime, Kushina put up her tent, while Naruto just watched her with an ever-present smirk on his face. When Kushina was done, she turned around to see if Naruto had put up his tent and saw him just standing there. Why are you just standing there? She asked him with a suspicious look. I kind of forgot to bring my tent. Naruto informed her with a sheepish look while rubbing the back of his head, which she knew was a habit of his for whenever he was embarrassed. We can share mine then. Kushina told him with a sigh. When they had gotten into her tent, Kushina wasn't surprised that Naruto instantly tried to get closer to her. You forgot it on purpose, didn't you? Kushina asked him with a knowing look. He just gave her a grin in return. Kushina really didn't mind sleeping in the same bed with him, as they had slept together when he was younger and they might as well keep each other warm during the night because it was quite chilly outside, so she allowed him to hug her from behind, also realizing that this was a good opportunity for her to get him back for groping her twice, especially since he so confidently accepted the challenge. I love you, Mom, Naruto suddenly exclaimed, surprising Kushina since she wasn't expecting it. Love you too, honey. Kushina quickly replied, knowing he was just being random like always. He would do this kind of thing from time to time. They had just snuggled, so she wasn't expecting him to say that or anything at all. She slowly started rubbing her rear on his crotch. Mom, what are you doing? Naruto asked as he felt her move. Kushina just carried on her up and down motion with her as she felt him getting hard, and when he started pushing against her, she moved away from him and turned over to face him. I think that makes it 2 for you and 1 for me, so good night, Naru-chan, I am feeling so tired. She told him with a forced yawn, and then she closed her eyes with a smile on her face. She could hear him muttering beside her whilst rubbing his through boxers, as she could also hear his hand move against the fabric of his boxers. After a while, when he had stopped moving, she slowly drifted to sleep. Her eyes snapped back open when she felt someone mount her thighs while she lay on her stomach, which could only be Naruto. She turned her head to look at him and saw him lean his face closer to her to kiss her neck, and she wanted to stop him, but she couldn't move at all. She felt completely drained and powerless. Was Kyuubi up to something? Finally, I have been waiting for such a long time to do this. Naruto whispered in her ear when he stopped kissing her neck, as she felt his hand push her panties to the side and slip his own boxers down, letting Kushina feel his throbbing erection on her thigh. Here it comes, Mom, Naruto exclaimed loudly before thrusting his inside of her. Ah! Kushina woke up with a loud scream, which also woke Naruto from his dream. Mom, what's wrong? Naruto asked in a matter of seconds. Kushina wasn't really sure what was happening before she realized that she just had a stupid dream. Sorry I startled you, honey, I just need a moment, Kushina said as she got out of the tent and went into the forest, leaving her son puzzled and without even realizing that she was still in her underwear. Kushina was already horny as it is when she rubbed her against him before going to sleep, but that dream just took it to another level. When Kushina had moved deeper into the forest, she came to a small lake which seemed cold enough, so with a quick look around and without giving it a thought, she dived straight into the lake. Next morning, Naruto hadn't spoken a word to Kushina about last night. She seemed irritated and he didn't know why, but then again Kushina had been used to living in a huge mansion the last 12 years, so maybe she was finding it difficult to suddenly sleep in a tent. Mom, are you okay? You seem angry, Naruto asked. What? Oh, I'm just a bit tired, I'm not angry, Kushina said before she motioned her student to stop. Oh, you noticed me, a man said as he came forward from behind a tree ahead of them. Not bad, the man taunted. He had dark spiky hair and an eye patch over his right eye. I had expected more of these reinforcements, but all I get is a woman and a boy. Oh well, at least I can have some fun with you afterwards. The man continued talking to himself as he stared at Kushina. You should be honored that I. Hey, what's up with that bored look? If you don't believe me, I have a bounty of 1 million on my head in Iwagakure, the man boasted, clearly proud. Why don't you just look at page 91 in your bingo book if you have one? Naruto just told him. When he was younger, he was quite curious to know how powerful his mom and dad were, so he looked for them in a bingo book. Taking the book out of his pocket, the man flipped to the page Naruto had told him about. Kushina Uzumaki. S class. AKA. Red Hot Blooded Habanero. Age. 36. Flee on sight. Ninjutsu, S+, Taijutsu, A+, Genjutsu, A-, Fuinjutsu, S+, Kenjutsu, SS+. Wanted alive, 500 million. Wanted dead, 250 million. Kushina was waiting for the man to respond, and finally something happened when started quivering and a small wet trail formed in his pants. Oh, I am so sore. The man was about to finish his apology, but Kushina quickly removed his head from his shoulders with her sword. It was always fun to play around with arrogant missing ninjas. Turning around, Kushina gave Naruto a smile and her student just nervously chuckled. His Kushina-sensei surely was quite frightening. As they traveled further, Kushina quickly got in a better mood. She didn't want to be annoyed at Naruto just because she was confused about last night. However, this wasn't the only unexpected meeting the team had that day. Further along the road, they heard women screaming from deeper inside the forest. There was a small bandit camp and there were women in cages, and some of them were being raped right at this moment. Kushina had a mixed face of disgust and boredom. This was going to be some extra work. Alright Naruto, you take care of this one. If you need to use your clones and if anything happens, I will cover you. You need to have your first kill anyway so that you wouldn't freeze in a fight against stronger opponents. Kushina said before she pushed Naruto down from the tree and right into the bandit camp. Go already. Kushina told Naruto while he quickly got his balance back and landed on his feet inside the bandit camp. Sitting on a branch, Kushina watched her student with sharp eyes. She didn't have to throw a single kunai to help him, however there still was something that bothered her. When she jumped down onto the ground, she realized that there were many bandits in pain. Naruto had only killed some of them. Well, I understand that you might have mixed feelings about killing. It's best to get it over with now rather than in the future, because later on you might find yourself in a kill or be killed situation. Kushina said as she freed the female prisoners while he slowly crouched to finish the bandits who were still alive with a tightened jaw, because he didn't want to kill people, but he knew that this is what a shinobi had to do. As she released the prisoners, she had expected them to thank her and her team, but instead one of the women tried to push her, which she quickly avoided. What have you done? Have you got any idea who these men worked for? The woman screamed. Nope. Who? Kushina asked in a non-caring tone. Gato, that's who. One of the. Are you even listening? The woman screamed as Kushina and her son were already walking away. If they were going to be so ungrateful, they could go find help themselves. They then continued forward until they finally reached some boats, but there wasn't any rower in sight, so they just took the boat. Kushina didn't want him to think about the killing too much, as he might start feeling guilty, so when Naruto summoned some clones to row, she lightly nudged him to sit at the back of the boat while she sat in front of him with her back touching his chest and pulled her top up, giving him the hint. She was giving him a small reward for getting his first kill. While both of Naruto's clones were busy rowing, Naruto was staring lustfully over Kushina's shoulder at her exposed S that he was fondling. You are getting better at this, Naruto. It feels really nice. Kushina said as she rested her back against Naruto while he was busy massaging her S. The entire way Naruto had taken no pause in squeezing her S and pinching her. However, when they got close to shore, Kushina told him to stop. She didn't like it either because he was really good at it. Looking around at the island, she saw that it was in pretty poor condition. From the scroll they had gotten, Team 7 was supposed to guard a man named Tazuna who wanted to build a bridge over a small river for trading. However, there was some rich company owner who wouldn't allow this and was trying to have the bridge builder killed. Well, lucky for Kushina, the island was small, so focusing a little, she quickly found a familiar chakra signature which belonged to Kakashi. Following the direction where she last sensed his chakra, they reached a small house outside of the city, with most of it being surrounded by water. Naruto and Kushina went over to the door and Naruto was waiting for her to knock, but instead she just let herself in. He really hoped that this was the place, or else this could get really awkward. Hello, anyone home? Kushina asked. A woman who looked to be around the same age as Kushina came to greet them, but she was nowhere, as his sensei was. Oh, you must be the reinforcements Kakashi talked about. Well, they just left to train not 5 minutes ago, but please come in. The woman offered, showing them into her home. Who the hell is it now? An old drunk man came into view with a beer in his hand, but he was struggling to even walk straight, so when he spotted two new faces he stumbled and dropped his beer. Ah damn. I was clumsy, I will go get some towels. The man said, quickly running off while bumping into walls and not realizing that the towels were in the other direction. Maybe Kushina was just such an insanely hot piece of that every man got confused in her presence, or maybe Tazuna was just that drunk, which was highly likely. I believe we will have fun here, Naruto, Kushina said as she turned and smiled at her only student and son. Tazuna's house. For someone living in an economically struggling country and not having a lot of money, Tazuna still had a very beautiful home. It was surrounded by water, which without doubt would be an amazing view at night. Kushina and her student had been shown to their room. They didn't have any trouble sleeping together, it was all a part of team bonding, of course. Tsunami had been really hospitable to them, but there was still something bothering Kushina because Tsunami didn't seem really happy, or at least she was just pretending to be happy. Kushina was snapped out of her thoughts when she heard voices from downstairs. Wait, how long have you been able to do the tree climbing exercise, Sasuke? When Kushina heard that, she started to make her way downstairs with Naruto following behind her. He had just been sitting facing the window while reading a book with a few glances at her once in a while. It was Team 7 and it didn't surprise Kushina that they were only now learning of tree climbing exercise. No doubt Kakashi had made them do a lot of teamwork-based exercises. Quite long. Sasuke just replied to Kiba in an annoyed tone, both of them not noticing her at all. Really? Kushina asked, making them jump a little when they heard her voice. What are you guys doing here? Kiba asked nervously, whilst looking at her face, and he seemed to be trying hard not to stare at her body if his quick glances up and down her body were any indication. Hey Sasuke, Sakura-chan, we are here to support you guys. Naruto said with a quick smile towards Sasuke, as he had always wanted to be Sasuke's friend because he felt bad for him, especially after the Uchiha massacre, but since Sasuke mostly brushed him off, Naruto just decided to greet him civilly whenever he saw him, but sometimes they could hold a light conversation about techniques, missions. He also saw Sasuke as his rival since everyone thought so highly of the last Uchiha. He also glanced at his academy crush, and when he looked at her he felt different. He didn't feel the urge to talk to her, neither did he feel like trying to get her attention. Maybe having fun with his mom had something to do with that. As soon Naruto's eyes landed on Kiba, though, his expression turned into an annoyed one as he watched Kiba ogling his mother. Kiba quickly looked at Naruto and couldn't help himself from saying, "Oh Naruto, you're here with your mom to help." Coming from the guy who has his dog fight for him. Hey Kakashi Onichan, Naruto retorted whilst also greeting Kakashi, and before Kiba could run at Naruto, Kakashi had grabbed the back of his jacket to pull him back. Yo Naruto, hope you haven't been slacking with your training. Kakashi replied to Naruto with a closed eye and a smile on his face. You have no idea how much I have been training, Kakashi Onichan. Naruto told him with a grin and sneaking a small glance at Kushina, who just grinned back at him with a light blush on her cheeks, quickly understanding what training he was hinting at. So Kakashi, what is the situation like right now? But make it short, it will just make my head hurt otherwise. Kushina said, causing Kakashi to sweat drop and look at Naruto, then back at her. Yep, they were definitely mother and son. Alright then. A shipping magnate by the name of Gato has hired some ninjas to prevent Tazuna from building a bridge for trading, as it would mean a huge financial loss for his company. Kakashi said in his usual bored tone. I take it they were quite strong since you are walking around with crutches. Kushina pointed out, she had heard about Gato before. So who was the ninja that you had to fight? Kushina asked. Finally she could have a good fight and get her adrenaline pumping, as well as get her mind off and the reason for her arousal, her son. Zabuza Momochi, one of the 7 swordsmen of the Hidden Mist. Kakashi said, which grabbed Naruto's attention. So he turned mercenary. I thought he would be helping with the civil war in Kiri. Naruto pondered out loud, getting both Junan's attention. I read about him in the bingo book and heard Dad talk about the civil war, so I thought all Kiri missing ninjas would return to help and get their name cleared. Kushina and Kakashi were both impressed with his deduction. He really had been improving his reading habits. Well, doesn't matter. Is he the only one, because I did kill someone on the way here, though I can't remember his name. Kushina told Kakashi. Meanwhile, Naruto was just spinning a kunai around his finger as he really couldn't stay still, not for long anyway. There was some young hunter nin with Zabuza, most likely a student and a very talented one. Kakashi said. Pretty sure Naruto could deal with him if need be. Kushina informed everyone, but only got a scoff from Kiba, as if. Kushina just smirked at that and pulled Naruto in for a hug and pushed his face into her cleavage. I have trained Naruto myself, so I know for sure he could do it. Why don't you tell them, Naruto? Kushina said with a mischievous smirk, loving every second of embarrassing Naruto in front of his friends while he was as red as a tomato. Everyone had red faces at the scene in front of them. Few hours later, Kushina had figured out the reason as to why Tsunami had been a bit skeptical at their arrival. Kushina had went into the kitchen to help with preparing the food, but she fell a bit silent when she saw that Tazuna didn't really have a lot of food in his house, so she quickly decided to go out and hunt some animal for her and Naruto. She went into their guest room where she found Naruto walking on a wall. She had to sweat drop at his behavior because he really didn't seem to care about anything. He would just do whatever he wanted to and whenever. He was just so dense sometimes. Alright, Naruto, get down. We are guests here, so behave and don't break anything. Unfortunately, I completely forgot about how poor this country is, so there is barely any food for everyone. I have spoken to Kakashi about this and we decided that we should go out to hunt for food separately so that there is enough for all of us. If you come and help me, I promise you will get a worthy reward, so what do you say? Kushina asked with a smirk, already knowing he wasn't going to say no, as he was the kind of person who would help anyone in need no matter what the consequences were. Reward was just because she felt quite horny after last night, especially after that dream she had. Yeah, sure, Mom, although I hope I am going to get a different reward this time. Naruto replied enthusiastically whilst murmuring the second part. Haha, I knew you would say yes. Kushina told him. She was just thinking about the reward since she knew how badly Naruto wanted her, seeing that his would harden at the sight of her. Should she do something different, or, with a quick look at Naruto's happy face, she had made up her mind. He is going to get a very generous reward tonight, I am sure he will love it. Kushina thought with a giggle. She was going to do something that she hadn't even done with Minato. Naruto put on a serious face while his imagination was running wild, just thinking of what kind of reward he would be getting. Maybe he was going to see his sensei completely, or maybe he would get a kiss with tongue. Maybe she would finally let him on her, which he had wanted to do for so long, and after seeing her bare ass he couldn't get that thought out of his head for even 1 second. A few drops of blood were running down his nose. Naruto honey, are you okay? Your nose is bleeding, Kushina asked in a soft voice when she saw blood dripping from his nose, and when he heard her voice he quickly looked elsewhere and wiped the blood away with the sleeve of his black hoodie. Of course, Mom, can we go now? Naruto almost yelled in excitement, clearly impatient. She had come to realize that he would get really excited when alone with her, otherwise he was quite composed. He also seemed a lot more expressive of his emotions with her since she started giving him rewards. So maybe he had been avoiding me the last couple months because he was getting horny being close to me, never thought of that. Kushina thought, only now realizing why he had been avoiding her the last few months, and it made a lot of sense. Yeah, let's go, we need to get back soon anyway, Kushina said as she grabbed Naruto's hand and started walking out the room with him. He had the widest smile that was possible while he only had one thought going through his head: I am surely the luckiest pervert ever, maybe the god of perverts has blessed me. Naruto thought gleefully. An hour later, Naruto had decided that he wasn't going to eat anything, especially after seeing Kushina skin and roast a rabbit. Are you sure you don't want any, Naruto? It is quite nice, Kushina offered as she continued eating. I think I'm good, thanks. Naruto insisted as he took his eyes away from the dead animal and moved away from her, instead focusing on the night sky, counting the stars while also thinking about different flavors of ramen just to get the dead rabbit out of his head. He loved animals so he couldn't see them hurt, and earlier when she had asked him about hunting, the only thing he had heard was that he would get a reward, so he had immediately agreed without a thought, but now, this might actually be difficult to get through. You should try being in a war, in enemy territory with no food, then you will realize how delicious this rabbit is. Kushina spoke from personal experience as she finished the last bite. Kushina glanced towards Naruto when she didn't get a response from him and saw that he was busy looking at the stars. It just seemed like a perfect time for Kushina to catch her Naru-chan off guard. A small teasing smile quickly spread on her face. As Kushina sneaked up behind Naruto, she wondered, was she a bad person doing this with a young boy, her own son? She had realized by now and accepted that she was really starting to enjoy what she was doing with Naruto. Even if she was just playing around, as far as Kushina had come to realize, it was fine when she had given him his first reward, but she crossed the line when she started kissing him on the lips. But she did this in order to improve Naruto and truly motivate him to become a great shinobi, especially knowing how much of a pervert he was in secret. For that reason she could let go of a little bit of guilt that she felt, and her heart still loved Minato anyway. As Anko had said, Naruto already knew about women, he just needed real experience, so who better than Kushina to teach him all about a woman? It had been ages since she had seen a up close, and with those final thoughts morality drifted from Kushina's mind as she sneaked up behind Naruto and then surprised him when she cupped his crotch. Oh, mom. Naruto yelped, completely caught off guard, and his brain was still trying to catch up to what was happening, her still clothed S pressing against his back, and the feeling of her hand grabbing both his flaccid and balls quickly gave him a rock-hard erection. Oh, I can feel it moving in your trousers, Naruto. Naruto turned his head to look at Kushina but was shocked yet again when Kushina slowly placed her lips against his. He just closed his eyes to relish in their kiss. It began as a small peck on the lips which quickly grew more intense, although Kushina still didn't let his tongue through into her mouth. When Kushina pulled back from their kiss and also stopped stroking his, he opened his eyes and saw her giving him a seductive look and a teasing grin. I promised you a worthy reward, didn't I? Kushina said as she zipped down her Junin vest and threw it off, and she also pulled her blouse and sports bra over her head. The moon gave enough light for Naruto to see her firm DDS. He could only describe them as perfect. Naruto finally fully turned towards Kushina, letting her actually see the hard tent in his pants which she had caused. She had seen him with an erection before, but now that she had felt it through his trousers, it seemed a lot bigger than she expected. Sensei, can I please your? Naruto asked as he got down on his knees with his head facing the ground as if he was praying to a goddess. Well, it wasn't exactly what I had in mind, but seeing I'm in a good mood today, I will allow my pervy student to play with my tits. Kushina said in a playful voice and a sultry smile. With that, Naruto actually jumped back onto his feet and got closer to Kushina while Kushina laid herself down on the grass on her back as Naruto hungrily got on top of her and attacked her S. He squeezed and bounced her left with one hand while greedily onto her right. He quickly started drawing circles around the pink tip with his tongue. Oh yeah, Kushina let out a loud which only made Naruto on her more hungrily. Kushina leaned her head back onto the grass and just enjoyed the pleasure she felt from Naruto on her, erected for a while as Naruto continued to lie on both her, switching from one to the other. He ed on them gently and roughly while also occasionally pinching her, and he showed no signs of wanting to stop anytime soon as he also left a few kisses on her S. But when Naruto had bitten onto her right and was about to pull it with his teeth, she softly touched his head to stop him. Oh my god. That was amazing, Naruto, but we already spent a lot of time and there is still one more thing I want to do, so take off your pants. Kushina said, grinning at Naruto's surprised face. Naruto quickly stood up and started to pull his trousers down with his boxers, at the same time revealing a proud erect to Kushina, who stared at its color and veins in wonder. It had been more than 12 years since she was this close to a. Slowly bringing her shaking left hand up to grab it, she got a little surprised when it throbbed at her touch. Naruto gave a grunt when she held the in her hand and slowly pulled the foreskin back, revealing the purple tip leaking precum. How in the world is his so huge already? He is only 12. It looks about 6 inches, my god. Kushina thought with a gasp while she grew a little wet at the thought of how big he would be when he is older. She was quite shocked by the size of it, seeing that she had only ever been with Minato. Kushina had just stroked his a few times when Naruto told her he was about to come, which did disappoint Kushina a little. She had hoped to play a little more, but she did understand that Naruto had probably never done this before, being only 12. Naruto had his eyes closed in pleasure while grunting, but opened them when Kushina's stroking stopped, as he was so close. But what he saw was much more better when Kushina pressed her soft S against his erection and his rod disappeared in between them, and he could only see his tip poking up in between her soft tits. Just the sight of his in between her S almost made him cum. Kushina only had to push her against his a few times before Naruto gasped, informing her that he was about to cum. Kushina raised her up around the tip to stop him from spraying his cum all over and ensure no one would get messy, but what Kushina couldn't have foreseen, however, was the sheer amount of sperm Naruto would shoot out, almost like a dam had been broken. Kushina felt every single shot from the nestled between her tits, and a few white spurts shot up and landed atop of her tits. When Naruto was done, he looked like he had just ran 100 laps around Konoha. When Kushina released her S and they opened up, she saw a sticky mess with few semen strings connecting to Naruto's now flaccid. "You are such a dirty boy, shooting all this on your mom," Kushina said with a playful smile towards Naruto, who in return looked at Kushina with a sheepish look whilst rubbing the back of his head. Kushina and Naruto went back to Tazuna's house after half an hour, which they used to clean themselves. When they returned to the house, they were greeted by Tsunami. "Oh hello, I hope you had luck hunting," Tsunami said, as she did feel a little bad that some of them had to eat outside, but they were a very poor country and fortunately these ninjas seemed to be able to handle themselves pretty well. "Yep, I'm stuffed," Kushina answered with a wide smile. "It sure was extraordinary," Naruto answered as he just sent his sensei a grin, who gave him one back in return, and the duo entered Tazuna's house with a satisfied feeling. Reason for their